Practical steps towards a hiring market that clears talent, not delivers identity. First steps towards stemming stochastic economic harm in a misaligned online labor market. Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull. I'm the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, the first anonymous user reviews for job ads across the U.S. It's the level of go-to-market awareness as well as public service for all the gaslighting. I am, doing a paradigm shift in the labor market online, and that requires trying to meet people where they are because people are coming from this from a lot of angles. So this comes from a Substack, which I put out once or twice a week, but I also do it in video and audio format because, like I said, people are where they are, You're trying to get that sort of out there, and education is the name of the game, trying to reframe what people think they know to show them they already know what you're going to say, but they just hadn't thought of it in that way before, Yeah. So starting from the beginning. The labor market isn't broken by accident. We've critiqued it, mapped its incentives, and shown how identity-driven design systematically extracts value from job seekers while preserving identity-based facades for employers and intermediaries. If you're new to this discussion or you want a refresher, there's some prior posts that provide essential context. Some of the previous ones, the great gaslighting, how professionalism led experts to extract financial safety and hope from the American populace for 20 years. Talked about how online hiring distorts perceptions of fairness and efficiency. Another one, Bonhoeffer's principle in the online labor market. Talked about the moral and structural consequences of platform incentives. The Workday lawsuit, when abstraction masquerades as efficiency, a case study in systematic extraction and misaligned accountability, or luxury goods employer brands and the illusion of a job market. I did that last time. Why hiring functions more like identity curation than talent matching. This post is different. It's not a full redesign. That's a generational project. These are first moves, near-term incentive-aligned interventions that reduce harm and restore signal without waiting for the perfect institutions or heroic regulators. Basically, trying not to require them to be perfect. We don't need Steve Rogers. We need a bunch of normal humans, to be able to have the incentive to act differently. So this post is going to be less economic synthesis and fascinating, things, and more practical applications. How could you make this happen in real life? If you had the real world, not a fantasy world, you could wave a magic wand and make everyone do exactly what you say, even though I'm not sure that's a really great fantasy. But, what can you do? So that's what this is. Who this is for. Job seekers want practical ways to suggest protections to workforce boards in their area. Small and medium employers struggling to access talent in fairly and identity-driven platforms. Systems thinkers, economists, and technologists looking for actionable levers rather than abstract critique. Policymakers and advocates seeking realistic interventions that improve labor market function without waiting for perfect conditions. Anyone who has read our prior work listed above and is ready to move from diagnosis to action. This is section 1, principles guiding the interventions. Excuse me. I've spent the last many posts critiquing the current market, and it seemed relevant to put forth at least some level of market intervention. I mean, to some degree, the job applicant perspective is always that. But it's my baby, it's my startup baby. So, of course, I'm going to be for it. But there's other things that can be done. Criticizing the structural architecture of others can bring value. I mean, you've got to know what you're looking at. But offering alternatives is equally important. One of the things that I appreciate about good art isn't just that it allows us to see where we are right now, but where we could be instead, What else could we be doing? If we're not going to do this, if we're all going to say this is the wrong thing to do, if I'm going to say this is the wrong thing to do, I should be able to say, what's a better other thing we can do instead, Now, to be clear, these are generalized ideas from a startup entrepreneur blogger, okay? This is not a list of specific, nuanced, prescriptive rules for complex dynamic systems or your particular context, okay? Think practical direction for the market to go, not overall prescriptive destination. I would absolutely vary these depending on person's context and the situation. And I'm definitely not the queen of the world. And I don't know that you should make me one, but I think that these will give you where I would go in general. And if you want to hire me to do something like that, I'm here for it. These practical steps outlined below are grounded in 3 core principles. Number 1, do not rely on institutional virtue or trust. Not right now. Systems and traditional market leaders have demonstrated only That trust in their ability to care for the workforce experience in the market that they drive the value of cannot be assumed. No, obviously not. These interventions bring value even if intermediaries, platforms, or regulators act opportunistically. Sorry, that always seems to happen. Reduce harm by changing incentives, not moralizing behavior. In the end, job seekers are not responsible for fixing structural extraction, and intermediaries are not expected to do the right thing voluntarily. These steps align incentives so that improved matching outcomes naturally emerge from self interested behavior. That's the goal. Let people act self interestedly and make the incentives align so that in the process of them doing that, the outcomes are good for everybody. Increase market legibility for job seekers. Transparency is critical. Job seekers must be able to have clear understanding of signals they encounter. Clear signals allow applicants to make informed decisions about where to invest their time, attention, and effort. The less the market is allowed to operate like an unregulated casino, the more genuine professionalism gets retrained into the people running it. That's better for the economy, for small business, for HR, for employers, for everyone. For everyone, Got to improve the system, restructure the system so the actors can be their professional selves, They don't have to be Steve Rogers to be cool. They can just be a normal person and be acting cool because the system allows that, Section 2, the practical steps. These constraints can be implemented via platform rules, workforce board standards, procurement requirements, or regulation, depends on institutional context. Again, the goal here is not 100% overnight improvement. This would be 2% better, which would make it easier to get 2% better, which would make it easier to get 2% better. The sort of thing that's like a flywheel that you start it running and then it gets running more and more and more, So first, restore signal to job postings. Eliminate free job postings. Yes. Every posting must impose a real cost on the employer. Yes, my God, yes. Free listings collapse meaningful signals and reward noise, encouraging platforms to prioritize volume over quantity. Paid postings ensure employers are investing in outcomes, not simply visibility or brand curation. Genuinely, there was a reason the newspaper never allowed free job postings. They were interested in trust, not engagement. The very first signal of market distortion, if nothing else, should have been the free job postings. Absolutely a signal that a market's interested in engagement, not running on engagement, not running on trust. A market that runs on trust delivers resolution. A market that runs on engagement delivers talent shortages and resume spam. That's what it does. So, note, to be fair, costs can be tiered and organized via size of the employer to not price small businesses out either, but it should not be ignored that the newspaper never once allowed free job postings. And there is a well-known, very human reason to approach good signal that way. It's just true. You can look at nonprofits and whatever. It's very sociologically well-known. Sociologically. Time-bound job listings. Listings should expire unless actively renewed by the employer. Yes. Evergreen roles that remain indefinitely distort the market and misrepresent available opportunities. Again, here, when a listing has to be renewed, it lowers the it creates cost for people to have to, I'm going to have to renew this evergreen. Oh, I'm going to have to renew this. Oh, it's annoying to renew this. And they're less likely to renew it. And that's what we want. Expiration creates natural pressure to update, validate, or remove job postings, preserving accurate and actionable signal for job seekers, or increasing it. Let's say increasing it. We're trying to stochastically increase it. We're moving the market in the opposite direction. Part B, make the supply chain visible. Mandatory listing provenance disclosure. Every job posting must clearly state how it was listed. Employer posted directly from the hiring organization. Recruiter posted, submitted by recruiter representing the employer. Or scraper acquired, sourced automatically from another site or listing. Maybe, I don't know. Purpose, job seekers must know the origin of each posting to evaluate credibility, avoid noise, and allocate effort efficiently. Definitely. Yes. Scrapers are half the problem here. See, unregulated scrapers. My goodness, am I not? Oh, no, win right there. Sorry. Platforms must, scrapers are half the problem. Platforms must publicly disclose whether scraping is used to populate the listings. Like these unregulated scrapers that nobody knows what they're doing. Of course, it's a part of the problem. It's pricing out small businesses. How many do we want to have close here? I'm just curious. Yeah, So make providence in. And again, the idea here isn't that everybody's going to be honest all the time right away. Probably not. But it doesn't matter. The fact of them putting anything out there allows job seekers to make more informed choices, including the idea that, hey, I noticed the last 5 times I went to Indeed and they posted this, it didn't actually turn out to be accurate. That means they're not as accurate of a website as I thought they were. And there you go with more information in it. It doesn't need to be Indeed. I just picked a name, but it can be any of them. Purpose, prevent from treating scraped data as equivalent to verified employer-initiated opportunities. Yes, this preserves signal integrity and prevents gaming of applicant intention. Yeah. C, eliminate white-labeled interaction. Oh my goodness, yes. Ban white-labeled recruiters. Job seekers must always know when they're talking to an employer or a contractor or a subcontractor. Yeah. Job seekers choose if they want to interact with job ads that use Manpower versus Pontoon versus Adecco, etc. When job seekers can make informed choices, employers benefit too. They can finally see whether recruiters are representing them well or poorly. Genuinely, employers, when you have a bunch of chefs that don't want job seekers to know that they're the ones cooking the food, in what world do you think they're cooking good food? You know? When they keep, oh yeah, I'll just be white labeled in you. That's not for your benefit. That's for your not benefit. Any sort of recruiter or any sort of contractor that's arguing for information opacity, against information symmetry, against transparency, isn't delivering a quality product. It's just how it is. People who argue for opacity don't create quality products. They don't. They'll sell you a lot of reasons for that. It doesn't matter what they say. It matters that there's a reason that chefs that make good food aren't terrified to let their diners, describe it. Ban white-labeled ATS interfaces. Yeah. Applicants must know which ATS system is being used, who controls the filtering logic. Again, you don't have to say what the logic is necessarily. You could. But already, they're able to make a choice and say, oh, I used to get through Greenhouse a lot, but I don't get through Workday. Or another thing, doesn't matter. Purpose, filtering decisions have a direct impact on whether candidates are considered at all. Removing opaque white-labeled systems ensures job seekers understand the rules of engagement and prevents structural manipulation of talent signals. Again, the more the workforce can make informed choices with their time and energy, the less the market will be an engagement trap for either end. So true. So true. It's really true. Note, realistically, guys, the fact that an industry outsider would be the first one to openly, aggressively suggest that we shouldn't do information asymmetry in the hiring market would suggest how profitable the opacity has been. But not for employers. If it's profitable for vendors, it's not. And also how detrimental to the workforce at large and our socioeconomic stability and safety. Hope Casinos versus Hiring Solutions. Did Las Vegas build vending machines or slot machines? You know these are entirely unregulated systems, right? Which one do you think Vegas? What would unregulated slot machines operate like? What would unregulated Vegas operate? What if unregulated Las Vegas controlled your ability to feed your children, and the Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and all of the workforce agencies kept praising Las Vegas while insulting how little you fed your children and isolating you from telling them about it? How do we think this ends without adapting the market hard to be ridiculously more considerate of its unpaid revenue drivers? Honest to God, I'll be so surprised if most of these HR tech companies don't go down in a slew of class action lawsuits on contingency. Just record the greatest extraction of wealth from the lower to the upper, like class warfare done utterly in silence. So it was class warfare done utterly in silence with massive psychological warfare against the workforce done at the same time. It's really quite impressive. Next, constrain identity infrastructure drift. Restrict SaaS job listings. That's software as a subscription service job listings, so subscription-based things. Prohibit SaaS-based evergreen listings that allow jobs to persist indefinitely without review. In general, employers should not have access to SaaS listing. There's a reason newspapers didn't do that for employers too, and it wasn't because they were pre-digital. It was because they cared about signal. They weren't trying to do engagement. They were trying to do trust. Exceptions could be allowed for municipalities, chambers of commerce, public interest, labor exchanges. Yeah? Purpose, we're preventing listings from becoming vehicles for brand signaling or identity creation rather than actual talent matching. Only listings with a direct accountable source should be active, reducing noise and restoring signal in the market. When employers are genuinely admitting to newspapers openly that they're polluting the market with acre lofts lemons, I mean, they're not trustworthy right now. They're not villains. They're also not trustworthy. Regulate extraction mechanisms, oversight of job scrapers and APIs. Yes, of course, yes. Scrapers are treated as labor intermediaries, must be fully disclosed and subject to audits from a specifically designated agency. They do not ensuring they do not misrepresent origin or inflate applicant activity artificially. This can't be everybody's going to be in charge. No, when everybody's in charge, no one's in charge. Give it to the FTC specifically. Give it to the DOL specifically, the BLS, whoever it's going to be. Give it to someone specific. So when it doesn't work, somebody's in trouble for it or in charge or accountable. Accountability is the thing. This entire labor market is just distributed irresponsibility. We need to make people responsible again, the professionals they can be. Purpose, scraping can generate revenue for platforms while extracting effort and attention from job seekers. Oversight with specific understanding of who's responsible ensures the system does not externalize labor market costs onto applicants while enriching intermediaries. Again, class warfare done utterly in silence. Transparency lets the workforce and elections hold the appropriate body accountable. I'm not against business at all. I just cannot stand watching dirty signal get perpetuated as if it's clean. No, it sure is not. No, it's not. It's nonsense signal. Do real economics. We'll be fine. Impose minimum obligations on ATS platforms, mandatory job seeker support infrastructure. Seriously. ATS exists because applicants exist, which means they should be the stakeholder, but they're acting as the unpaid workforce. All ATS platforms must provide dedicated support lines for applicants, publicly available documentation of the platform's functions, clear explanations of filtering and ranking logic. If nothing else, there should be some hey, you didn't get the job and it was because of us. Not that hard. You have those automated emails. You could do it. You've done it some. Purpose, job seekers are users of the system and its revenue drivers. Not just inputs. Basic transparency and support are a minimum accountability measure. When the unpaid U.S. workforce generates billions for companies whose job is to use that unpaid labor to keep that workforce unemployed in a market they cannot opt out of, absolutely not. The very least they could do is operate with some basic level of transparency. Otherwise, they might just say, hey, poor person, hand me the money over there. Why? Because you have to. It's nonsense. Job seeker facing UX standards, user experience standards. Platforms must meet basic usability and transparency standards. Again, same thing. Applicants should be able to understand which actions the system takes and how decisions are made. They get to know when they're not talking to an employer or not. It's not hard. If it was the ATS that ended their success in the hiring process, they have a right to know. And again, here's the thing. It doesn't even matter all the time. Say I'm Joe Schmo and I don't like using Greenhouse. Maybe that's okay. Maybe employer uses Greenhouse anyways because employer isn't trying to attract a candidate like me. Maybe that's all right. Maybe I get to make the choice. And maybe the more I make that choice, the less that line is long and you get all those resume spams. Purpose, broken user experience is the backbone of the silence that tells the workforce they weren't worth considering from HR tech vendors while the same vendors were entitled to their presence. Again, we're talking about entitlement to engagement. They're not building trust with the workforce. They're feeling entitled to their engagement without having to, which is why you have engagement traps, not neutral platforms. It's what allows HR tech vendors to build an entire marketplace on the unpaid energy of the workforce of American people that they feel no obligation to serve. They feel entitled to extract value without having to reciprocate with time and equal time. When revenue comes from engagement rather than resolution, aka engagement rather than trust, from keeping people in the system rather than helping them through it, long-term unemployment of the workforce isn't a bug. It's the product that employers are purchasing and everybody's signing off on. The level of epic societal betrayal is off the charts here. We can change this though. We could just not do this anymore. We could just have been wrong and be like, you know what? I was wrong. Let's not do this anymore. I feel like it's a good win, you know? It's the product. Requiring clarity restores respect, agency, and starts breaking the cycle. Again, we're breaking a cycle. We're not waving a magic wand here. We're making it better. Check the research. The interventions proposed here are grounded in a combination of economic theory, behavioral research, and applied work on online labor markets. They demonstrate that restoring signal, transparency, and accountability is both possible and evidence-based. Just to throw an extra one in too, we could make some regulations with regards to these job platforms. Like Indeed should not be allowed to post the same role in 20 different cities, even though it's for the same company and it's only one role. There should be one application for 20 of those, or have it be clearly stated, because even when it's not a ghost job, it's a real job, they still extract from the applicants. So where do I take some of this from? Sorry, it's a bonus, but general, Akerlof, the market for lemons, I mention him all the time. It was good. He got a Nobel Prize for it. I feel like it was pretty clearly good. Rashain Charol, platform competition in two-sided markets. From lemon markets to managed markets, the evolution of eBay's reputation systems from 2014 from OSU. It's very good. At the Stanford Institute for Economic Research on service quality evidence, Uber ratings, and performance. My own work, category error in the talent acquisition industry, and a job market for lemons. TJAP prototype introduces 3 interlocking trust layers for online decentralized labor market governance. I like it. A way to see what we're building and how we plan to protect the market and gamification as we scale. Because let's be clear, I'm obviously trying to balance the market, but let's be clear, it's not like job seekers are perfect saints either. You know, people are going to try to game it on the other end of it too. They're not there yet because they're all beat down into submission by the last 25 years of this nonsense, but they'll get there, you know? And so I need to plan for both ends of that, how to protect against gamification on their side as well. So I have 3 interlocking trust layers, which, you know, what do I say? Do you say that? I don't know. Coming soon, maybe the 4th. I was working with somebody on the 4th layer for that, but regardless. Across these literatures, from economic theory to platform design and real-world reputation systems, the evidence shows signal matters. Reputation mechanisms can align incentives when properly structured. Design choices determine outcomes. Poor or asymmetric feedback collapses signal into noise. It just does. Restoring feedback loops is feasible. Reputation and transparency systems can be engineered to improve market clearing. They can. It's great. Section 3, distributed market memory through bidirectional feedback. Again, these are my Federalist papers, but they're for my products, so I'm not sorry. The job applicant perspective implements bidirectional reputation as the infrastructure of memory for online hiring. Yes. Game theory. It was a thing for a reason. Everybody uses it for a reason, except for hiring. They don't use it for the very same reason that everybody uses it, because they don't want it to work. Yes, job seekers are not passive participants. They're obviously actors in the market. They're 95% of the market. My goodness, yes. They function as the cumulative memory layer that holds employers, recruiters, and platforms accountable. Market of labor regulated by the people that rely on it for their livelihood, and whose unpaid labor drive all of its revenue. It's amazing to me how much democracy and economic trust unite here. Key features of this approach: no centralized verified badges. Power comes from reputational aggregation, not certification. No singular actor has to openly describe all their insights. Each actor can safely share what they feel comfortable sharing. Reputation accrues to all market actors, employers, recruiters, platforms, creating a feedback loop that is cumulative, contextual, and difficult to erase. Yeah. TJAP's design explicitly restores signal in the labor market. It acts as a reputation substrate, a signal restoration mechanism, and a decentralized accountability layer. Trust layers and anti-gaming mechanisms are explicitly designed, not assumed. And my 3 interlocking trust layers. And I documented it in SSRN, which you mentioned earlier. And they're iterative, allowing the system to adapt to strategic behavior. Because you're not saying for sure this is what it is. You're saying this is a red flag. This is I put different layers of warning systems in there that something could be shenaniganed and needed to be investigated. You know, because I want the incentives to be aligned, not the outcomes, the incentives, so that the outcomes can come naturally. Anyway, this is not regulation by platform. It is regulation by memory. Job seekers collectively preserve and enforce the integrity of market signals, creating a self-reinforcing distributed system that addresses the structural asymmetries of identity-driven hiring markets. I'm sorry I got wordy with that stuff. It makes sense to me. I realize people tell me them too fancy with my words. But regardless, I think it's right. So sorry, I'll try to figure a way to say this less wordy. But it's memory. Game theory requires memory. It requires user reviews for someone to say, oh, yeah, I went there and it was 5 stars. I went there, it was 3 stars. Because you're not looking for one answer. There's always going to be Yahoo who loves it, Yahoo who hates it. You're looking for the middle of the curve and the way the curve changes, because sometimes you have some great management and people are getting really good reviews, and other times management goes down and then management gets replaced. That's okay. That's normal. That's life, You want to see that in the reviews that are there. Closing constraint. These interventions do not fix hiring overnight. They are designed to alleviate ongoing harm and start restoring legibility and accountability to the system. Clearing markets rely on memory. Identity markets erase it. By reintroducing distributed cumulative feedback through mechanisms like TJAP, the labor market begins to preserve signal and enforce outcomes without requiring anyone to suddenly become saints. This is memory as infrastructure, not moral expectation, a practical step towards a market that clears talent instead of curating identity. Always remember, 1% better than what we currently are is 100% better too. 2% better is 100% more better. We're already getting more and more better. And the goal is to say that my agency and my actions can make this a little better. Memory above all else, transparency and memory, allowing job seekers to share what they've experienced so others can be there. I think it's really important to look at it not so much as complaining as protecting others from bad experiences. So anyway, also drives engagement too in a different kind. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Please like, follow, share, repost, stop by the Job Applicant Perspective. Yeah, excited to talk about this because hyper-focus, love this stuff. Economics is great. I like first principles. I just think they're not being utilized at the moment, and I want to do that again. I love business. I didn't, it sounds terrible to say. I didn't think I would. I really like business, but I like economics. But I do not like dirty signal. Oh my gosh, it bothers me so much to see signal that's easily adjustable, that is just bad. And so I want to make it better again so it can grow again. I like gardens, ecosystems, so stuff. Anyway, thanks very much. Have a good one.